You know that feeling when you're swimming and something brushes against your leg? That split second of pure terror before you realize it's just seaweed? Well, what if I told you there was a time in history when that terror was completely justified? Because just seaweed could have been a set of jaws bigger than a school bus, a whip-like neck longer than a fire truck, or even a spiral of teeth that would make a chainsaw jealous. But here's the thing, and this is gonna sound insane, these monsters weren't even the scariest part. What made these prehistoric waters truly terrifying was that some of these killers didn't just hunt in the deep ocean. They could get you in the shallows, the rivers, and sometimes even on land. And before you comment, I'm built different, or I could take them, trust me, when you see what number 1 on this list could do, you'll understand why even Jaws would have been this thing's breakfast. And if you think you're tough enough to survive these prehistoric ocean dinosaurs, hit the like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments how you'd escape them. Let's start with what looks like a dinosaur that got its design inspiration from a broken pool noodle. Meet the Plesiosaurus, proof that even prehistoric monsters had neck day at the gym. With a neck making up half of its body length, this thing looks like what would happen if a giraffe decided to cosplay as a sea monster. But don't let that fool you. This is nature's perfect killing machine, and I'm about to ruin swimming for you forever. First off, this thing was huge, up to 50 feet long huge. For reference, that's about 10 5-foot tall people standing back to back on the ground. But surely you'd see it coming for you, you might think. Yeah, about that. Remember how I said this thing was basically a pool noodle with teeth? Here's where it gets terrifying. That ridiculous neck wasn't a design flaw. It was nature's perfect stealth weapon. Unlike every other aquatic predator that creates waves when hunting, the Plesiosaurus' neck was so perfectly streamlined it could slide through water without creating a single ripple. Imagine a 50-foot predator that's literally invisible until it decides to ruin your day. But wait, it gets better. And by better, I mean worse. Those 4 massive flippers, they weren't just for show. They worked like underwater wings, letting this thing pivot and accelerate faster than your dating life going south. And if you're sitting there thinking, I could take it, first of all, no. And second of all, this is literally the weakest entry on our list. Because if you thought a prehistoric pool noodle with teeth is bad, wait until you see what happens when nature decides to stick a circular saw inside a shark's mouth and call it a day. Well, meet the Heliocropion, because apparently regular sharks weren't scary enough. So nature decided to install a circular saw in one. Imagine you're a paleontologist just living your best life at the dig site when you discover what looks like someone dropped their power tools in the dig site. Plot twist, that is not a tool. That's this thing's actual jaw. And yes, this is why paleontologists might need therapy. Now you might be thinking this is just some weird defense mechanism. Nope, this is literally how it ate things. At 25 feet long, this swimming food processor was about the size of a school bus. Though, unlike your school bus driver, this thing was actually excited to see you. The only good news? These things went extinct millions of years ago. The bad news? They're not even in the top 5 most terrifying things on this list. Because if you thought a shark with a built-in power tool is nightmare fuel, wait until you see what happens when a scorpion decides to take swimming lessons and growth hormones at the same time. Alright, remember that time when you last saw a tiny spider in your shower and had a complete mental breakdown? Let's crank that trauma up to 11. Meet Jaekelopterus, the largest arthropod to ever exist. At 8 feet long, this is what happens when a scorpion files for emancipation from arachnids and decides to become a submarine instead. Now I know what you're thinking, at least it has a tiny scorpion stinger, right? Oh, you sweet, sweet child. It didn't need one. That's like bringing a butter knife to a tank fight. Instead, nature gave it claws that make Edward Scissorhands look like he's working with safety scissors. Each claw was longer than your entire arm and could snap shut with enough force to cut through bone like it's cutting through my will to live. And trust me, these weren't just for show. Fossils show these things were basically the wood chippers of the ancient seas. But something that big must have moved like a drunk submarine, right? Yeah, that's exactly what its prey thought too. For the last 2 seconds of their lives, this thing was so hydrodynamic it could glide through water with all the grace of a ballet dancer and all the murderous intent of my cat at 3 a.m. And just when you think you've got it figured out, scientists dropped this bomb. These things probably hunted in packs, because apparently nature looked at one giant murder scorpion and thought, you know what this needs? Friends. But if you think a giant scorpion with a friend group is terrifying, wait until you meet the fish that looks at tanks and said, too much armor, and then ate the tank. You know how people say there are plenty of fish in the sea? Well, here's one that made sure there weren't. Meet Dunkleosteus, the fish that looked at tanks and thought it needs more violence. Let's start with the obvious. This 33-foot nightmare didn't bother with teeth. No, it went straight for self-sharpening bone blades that could slice through everything. Imagine Edward Scissorhands, but as a fish. and with the personality of that one DMV employee who enjoys watching your soul die while waiting. At least it had normal fish parts somewhere, right? Yeah, that's adorable. Instead of scales, this thing wore full body armor so thick that the first scientists who found it probably thought they discovered a medieval knight's Toyota. The only thing not armored was its attitude, and it didn't need protection for that. Now, about those blade jaws. They snapped shut with 8,000 pounds of force per square inch. That's enough power to turn a car into a paperweight, or my self-confidence into, well, my regular confidence. And just when you think you understand this thing, here's a fun fact. They were cannibals. That's right, Dunkleosteus was so metal, it would eat other Dunkleosteus. Imagine being so intimidating that even other versions of you are on the menu. It's like if I was scared of myself, except I already am. But if you think a self-eating tankfish is peak nightmare fuel, wait until you see what happens when a dinosaur decides to become an Olympic swimmer. Remember in Jurassic Park when the T-Rex was the apex predator? Well, Spinosaurus is what happens when that apex predator needs a lifeguard. This is nature's version of a kid who couldn't decide what they wanted to be when they grew up, so they became everything. Imagine a 50-foot dinosaur having an identity crisis. Part crocodile, part sailboat, part nightmare fuel. It's just like me trying different personalities in my YouTube videos, except this one actually worked. For years, scientists thought this was just another big dinosaur with a cool mohawk. Then they found more fossils and had what we in the scientific community call a what the actual heck moment. But at least it was clumsy in the water like other big dinosaurs, right? Oh, you naive person. This thing had a tail that could outpower a jet ski, bones denser than my dating history, and pressure sensors in its snout that could detect movement better than my mom detecting my excuses for not calling her. But here's where it gets spicy. While other dinosaurs were picking either land or water specialization like normal creatures, Spinosaurus was out there being an overachiever in both. And just when you think you've figured out all of its blind spots, plot twist, this thing could pivot underwater faster than I change my personality while talking to different people. But if you think a swimming dinosaur with better life choices than me is scary, wait until you meet the crocodile that made T-Rex pack a lunch. You know what everyone says? See you later, alligator. Well, Deinosuchus is why prehistoric animals said goodbye forever. Let's get something straight. Calling this thing a giant crocodile is like calling a nuclear explosion a warm breeze. At 35 feet long and weighing as much as a school bus, this is what happens when a regular crocodile finds a gym membership in a protein shake subscription, with a side of tren. But it probably just ate fish like normal crocs, right? Well, we've literally found dinosaur bones with Deinosuchus tooth marks in them. This thing wasn't just eating dinosaurs, it was leaving reviews. And by reviews, I mean bite marks the size of dinner plates. Here's the terrifying part. Its bite force was stronger than a T-Rex's. We're talking about 100,000 newtons of force. That's 5 times what it takes to total your car. Not that I would know anything about that. But wait, it gets better, or worse depending on how attached you are to living. Unlike modern crocs that at least gave you the courtesy of being visible, Deinosuchus had special scales that made it practically invisible underwater. It's like nature's version of stealth mode, except instead of avoiding enemies, it was specifically designed to ruin everyone's day. And those eyes, they weren't on top of its head like normal crocs. They were positioned higher and angled forward, giving it binocular vision. Translation, this thing could judge distances better than I judge my life choices. But if you think a dinosaur-eating crocodile is peak terror, wait until you meet the creature that makes a giraffe's neck look like a design flaw. Remember when you were a kid and drew that really weird animal that was basically all neck? Congratulations, you accidentally drew an Elasmosaurus. Except the real thing was way worse than your crayon masterpiece. And don't listen to your parents. I think that drawing was a masterpiece, even if they threw it out after you gave it to them. I believe in your art skills. Let's talk about that neck, because holy cow, what a neck. We're dealing with 25 feet of pure neck on a 46-foot body. But surely having a neck that long made it slow and clumsy, right? Well, that's exactly what its prey thought right before becoming an underwater drive-through meal. See, that ridiculous neck wasn't a bug, it was a feature. Here's the nightmare part. Elasmosaurus used that neck like a stealth sniper rifle. The body could be a chilling 25 feet away, hidden in murky water or behind rocks, while that neck was sneaking up on prey from literally any angle. But the real kicker? Scientists think that these things hunted in groups. Picture not one, but several of these living periscopes coordinating attacks at different angles. Basically, this thing is what happens if Plesiosaurus evolved as a Pokemon into its final evolution. But if you think a swimming sniper rifle with teeth is terrifying, wait until you meet the whale that made Moby Dick look like a goldfish. You know how sperm whales are already intimidating? Well, Livyatan is what happens when a sperm whale watches too many slasher films and decides to become the villain. Named after the biblical sea monster, the Livyatan, because apparently scientists are metal as hell, This 60-foot long nightmare factory wasn't just big, it was specifically designed to eat other whales. Not fish, not squid, whole other whales. But modern whales are peaceful giants, right? Yeah, this isn't your friendly neighborhood whale. Livyatan had teeth the size of baseball bats, the biggest of any known animal ever. Do you know how big a baseball bat is? We're talking about chompers over a foot long. For reference, that's longer than my list of life accomplishments. But wait, because it gets worse. Those massive teeth weren't just for show. They could generate enough bite force to crush a small boat, and thanks to its sophisticated sonar, it could track prey through pitch black water. But if you think a whale with slasher movie ambitions is the peak of ocean terror, wait until you meet the lizard that made Godzilla look like an amateur. If you ever wondered what would happen if a Komodo dragon looked at Jaws and thought, nah, I can do better, meet the Mosasaurus, the result of a lizard's midlife crisis going horribly right. At 56 feet long, this sea lizard makes modern great whites look like goldfish with attitude problems. But size isn't even the scariest part. This thing had a double hinged jaw like a snake. That means it could unhinge its mouth like my ability to make good decisions at 3 a.m. But at least it was restricted to deep water, right? Oh, you are so wrong. Mosasaurus had specialized fins that let it hunt at any depth, from surface to sea floor. It's like having a killer whale's agility, a shark's attitude, and my ex-wife's ability to show up exactly where I don't want to be. But here's where it gets spicy. Those teeth weren't just for show. Each one was serrated front and back, basically prehistoric Swiss Army knives. And thanks to its binocular vision, it could judge distances better than I judge people who say they're not afraid of deep water. But the real nightmare fuel here, that tail. Scientists found out it had a shark-like tail fin that could generate enough thrust to launch its entire body out of the water. Imagine a bus-sized lizard pulling a free willy, except instead of heartwarming Disney vibes, it's heart-stopping, whatever they did at Disney with the Disney Plus subscription thing where the girl died scenario. It's like that. And just when you think you figured out its hunting pattern, plot twist, Mosasaurus had a special joint in its skull that let it swing its head like a baseball bat. While most predators bite and pull, this thing would bite and swing, turning any fight into a home run derby where you're the ball. If you think a giant sea lizard with a baseball bat for a head is the final boss of the prehistoric oceans, wait until you meet the shark that made Mosasaurus pack its lunch. In every horror movie, the final boss makes all of the previous villains look like warm-up acts. Well, Megalodon is what happens when nature decides to make Jaws look like Finding Nemo. Let's start with the obvious. At 59 feet long, this thing makes modern great whites look like fish sticks. But size isn't even the scary part. Those teeth, each one was the size of your face. Not like modern shark teeth, we're talking about serrated steak knives that could cut through whale bones like I cut through my New Year's resolutions. But surely something this big was slow, right? Well, that's adorable, because Megalodon could hit speeds of 45 miles per hour, making it faster than a speedboat. Imagine being on a jet ski, going full throttle, and still watching this thing gain on you in the rearview mirror, if it even bothered to chase you. But here's the real nightmare fuel. Its bite force was so powerful, 40,000 pounds per square inch powerful actually. It could literally crush a car like a soda can, and then some. Scientists literally had to invent new ways of measuring bite force because this thing broke their scales. It's like when I try to measure my social anxiety, the tools just don't go high enough. And just to really drive home how apex this predator was, it literally hunted whales for breakfast. Not modern whales like the boring beluga whale, ancient whales that were themselves apex predators. This thing was so hardcore, it made Moby Dick look like a goldfish with big ambitions in life. And there you have it, 10 reasons why your built different comments aren't the flex you think they are. If you enjoyed watching your survival chances drop to 0, hit the like button like a megalodon crushing a whale skull. And since you've made it this far without having a panic attack about the ocean, you might as well subscribe. I've got plenty more prehistoric nightmares that'll make these guys look like swimming pool floaties. Let me know how you would beat any of these dinosaurs if you could in the comments down below, and click the video on screen for more dinosaurs you absolutely have zero chance surviving.